This story is not just about a missing child. It is about silence, fear, and questions that have lasted for decades. On December 27, 1991, 4-year-old Amanda Nicole Eileen Campbell vanished in broad daylight from a quiet neighborhood in Fairfield, California, and she was never seen again. In this documentary on Hidden Truth, we uncover every known detail, every lead, every suspect, and every unanswered question surrounding her disappearance. This is a story of hope, mistakes, chilling possibilities, and a family waiting for answers that never came. Watch carefully, stay until the end, and subscribe to Hidden Truth, because every second of this story matters, and every truth deserves to be remembered. It began as an ordinary afternoon, the kind of moment that never feels important until it becomes the last memory anyone has. Amanda Nicole Eileen Campbell was 4 years old, small for her age, curious and full of trust in a world that had never hurt her before. December 27, 1991 was quiet in Fairfield, California, the kind of winter day where nothing feels dangerous. Amanda had already spent part of the day playing with friends alongside her older brother, laughing, moving between houses, watched loosely but lovingly by adults who believed their neighborhood was safe. What happened next would shatter that belief forever. Amanda rode her small bicycle away from home with permission, confidence, and excitement, unaware that these few minutes would become the most analyzed moments of her life. Every turn of her wheels, every step she took, would later be questioned, replayed, and dissected by investigators and grieving family members who would ask the same question again and again: how could a child disappear so completely? Amanda Nicole Eileen Campbell was born on May 7, 1987, to her mother Mary Ann Campbell and her father Jim Campbell. By all accounts, she was a normal, happy child growing up in a working-class neighborhood in Fairfield, California. The Campbells were not wealthy or powerful, but they were attentive and involved. And Amanda was known by neighbors as a friendly child who enjoyed riding her bike and visiting nearby friends. On the afternoon of December 27, 1991, Amanda had been playing at a friend's house with her older brother. Later, she left him and returned home alone to ask her father if she could visit another friend named Beth Ann. Jim Campbell agreed and watched Amanda ride her bike across Larchmont Drive through the living room window. That moment is critical because it establishes the last confirmed sighting of Amanda by a family member. She crossed the street safely, riding confidently, exactly as she had done many times before. She never arrived at Beth Ann's house, and investigators later confirmed that Beth Ann was not even home at the time Amanda would have attempted to visit. Somewhere between permission and arrival, Amanda vanished. Hours passed before concern turned into panic, and when night came, her grandmother discovered Amanda's small bicycle abandoned near a gate only blocks from the family home. The bike showed no obvious signs of damage, no blood, no struggle, just silence. A child-sized blue sock was also found in the area, though it was never confirmed whether Amanda had been wearing it. Almost immediately, questions emerged about whether the bicycle had been moved, and whether those early moments were misunderstood. By December 29th, the Federal Bureau of Investigation joined the search, signaling the seriousness of the case. Volunteers, law enforcement officers, and search teams combed Fairfield and surrounding areas. Bloodhounds traced Amanda's scent for nearly 1 mile along nearby trails before losing it completely. Then came a chilling report from a motorist who claimed to have seen a girl matching Amanda's description inside a Datsun B210 sedan in East Fairfield, appearing tied up and screaming. Police rushed to the area, but the vehicle was never found, and the sighting was never confirmed. What began as a simple bike ride had turned into a full-scale investigation with no clear answers and no sign of the child everyone was desperately searching for. As the sun set on that day in Fairfield filled with flashing lights, whispers began to spread. Neighbors asked whether someone had been watching, waiting, planning. Investigators wondered if Amanda had trusted the wrong voice or followed the wrong direction. The abandoned bicycle became a symbol of everything that did not make sense. How far could a 4-year-old travel on her own? Why was there no scream heard? Why was there no witness who could say with certainty what happened next? Each unanswered question pushed the investigation deeper into uncertainty. And as the hours turned into days, one terrifying possibility became harder to ignore. What if Amanda had never been meant to return home at all? And if that was true, then who was close enough, bold enough, and hidden enough to make a child vanish without a trace? By the time the sun rose the next morning, the disappearance of Amanda Nicole Eileen Campbell was no longer a private family fear. It had become a public emergency. What began as confusion quickly hardened into dread as every hour passed without answers. Law enforcement officers flooded the neighborhood, volunteers gathered in clusters, and parents held their own children closer while scanning every unfamiliar face. The silence left behind by a 4-year-old girl echoed louder than any alarm. This was the moment when hope and fear collided. Because searches can save lives when time is on their side, but they can also expose the terrifying truth that someone meant for a child to vanish. Every footstep taken by searchers, every door knocked and every field examined carried the same unspoken thought. Someone knows something, and someone is not speaking. The search for Amanda Nicole Eileen Campbell intensified rapidly across Fairfield, California. Officers canvassed nearby homes, questioned neighbors, and retraced the short path Amanda was believed to have taken on her bicycle. The area where her bike was discovered became the center of attention, not because of what it showed, but because of what it did not. There were no signs of a struggle, no skid marks, and no clear indication of which direction she had gone. That absence suggested control rather than chaos, a detail that troubled investigators deeply. As daylight faded into another night, bloodhounds were brought in to follow Amanda's scent. The dogs tracked her path through a nearby trail, guiding handlers for nearly 1 mile before the scent abruptly vanished. To trained investigators, this often indicates entry into a vehicle, a moment when the ground no longer carries the trace of a child's movement. On December 29, 1991, the Federal Bureau of Investigation joined the case, confirming that authorities believed this was more than a simple missing child report. The involvement of federal agents brought additional resources, wider coordination, and deeper concern. Flyers were distributed, media coverage increased, and search teams expanded outward from the neighborhood into surrounding areas. Then came a report that sent shockwaves through the investigation. A motorist claimed to have seen a young girl matching Amanda's description inside a Datsun B210 sedan in East Fairfield, approximately 6 miles from where Amanda was last seen. According to the witness, the child appeared tied up and screaming. Police rushed to the location immediately, but the vehicle was never located, and no further confirmed sightings followed. Despite the lack of verification, the report shifted the investigation toward a stranger abduction theory, one that implied planning, opportunity, and intent. Community organizations joined the effort, including the Amber Swartz Foundation, which had been formed after the kidnapping of Amber Swartz Garcia. Billboards featuring Amanda's image were later placed in nearby cities, asking the public for information and refusing to let her face fade into memory. Despite these efforts, days turned into weeks with no confirmed leads. Each press conference carried less certainty than the one before. Investigators revisited the same streets, re-interviewed witnesses, and questioned whether early assumptions had misled the case. Even the discovery of a child-sized blue sock near the disappearance site raised more questions than answers. No one could confirm whether Amanda had been wearing it, or whether it belonged to her at all. What should have been a trail became a collection of fragments that refused to form a clear picture. And as the search expanded outward, one truth became impossible to ignore. Whoever took Amanda had done so in a way that left almost nothing behind. As weeks passed, fear settled into something heavier. Families wondered whether Amanda had been targeted or chosen at random. Investigators asked whether someone nearby had noticed her routine and waited for the right moment. The lost scent, the abandoned bicycle, and the unconfirmed vehicle sighting formed a triangle of uncertainty that could not be closed. Every tip raised hope before collapsing under scrutiny. Every new theory introduced another question, and as the search stretched further away from the quiet street where Amanda had last been seen, the focus slowly began to shift. If she had not been found nearby, then perhaps the danger had never been local at all. Or perhaps it had been closer than anyone wanted to believe. And with that realization came a chilling question that would define the next phase of the investigation. What if the person responsible had been hiding in plain sight from the very beginning? When the search for Amanda Nicole Eileen Campbell failed to bring her home, the investigation shifted into a more dangerous phase. The search for a person rather than a place. This is where hope becomes fragile and accusations can destroy lives. Investigators began to re-examine every tip, every unusual report, and every individual who stood out, not because of proof, but because of proximity, behavior, or timing. In cases involving missing children, suspicion often spreads quickly, and fear has a way of reshaping logic. For the community of Fairfield, California, the idea that a stranger could take a child so quietly was terrifying, but the idea that the person might be known, or even nearby, was far worse. As leads grew thinner, attention turned to patterns, similar crimes, and people whose actions did not fit clean narratives. This chapter marks the moment when the investigation moved from searching fields and streets into the darker territory of human behavior, where truth is harder to see and mistakes are easier to make. By 1992, law enforcement began exploring possible connections between Amanda's disappearance and other crimes involving children in Northern California. In July of that year, the abduction and rape of a 9-year-old girl in the Napa area raised serious alarm. The victim had been lured into a van, taken to a residence, assaulted, and later dropped off near Solano Community College in Fairfield. Investigators noted similarities that could not be ignored, including geographic overlap and method. Both incidents traced back to the western side of Fairfield, a detail that narrowed focus but did not deliver answers. While the Napa victim survived and provided limited information, no direct link to Amanda could be proven at the time. Years later, a suspect would be arrested in connection with that 1992 crime, but even that development failed to close the question of whether the cases were connected. Around the same period, attorneys involved in an unrelated murder case suggested that the disappearances of several children, including Amanda, Amber Swartz-Garcia, and 𝐂𝐇𝐀𝐏𝐄𝐑𝐒, might be linked. These theories gained attention because of timing and regional proximity, but they also carried risk. Confessions and charges in later years would confirm responsibility in some cases while eliminating connections in others, leaving Amanda's case isolated once again. Tips continued to arrive, including a claim in 2001 that Amanda had been murdered and hidden beneath a nearby home. Authorities searched the property carefully, but no evidence was found. Each failed lead deepened frustration and reinforced the same reality: someone had taken Amanda, and whoever that person was, they had managed to avoid exposure. During this time, one name drew intense public attention: Timothy Binder. In December 1992, police searched the home and vehicle of the 44-year-old man after a detective observed him emerging from a ditch in Fairfield weeks after Amanda disappeared. Inside his van, officers found posters of missing children, including Amanda, Amber Swartz-Garcia, and 𝐂𝐇𝐀𝐏𝐄𝐑𝐒, along with a small shirt and a piece of stone believed to have come from a child's gravestone. Binder claimed his actions were religiously motivated, stating that he felt called to help find missing children. He was arrested for disruption involving children, but later cleared of involvement in Amanda's disappearance. His case became a cautionary example of how suspicion, once unleashed, can become permanent in the public mind, even when legal responsibility is never established. Binder would later appear on national television, speaking directly to the mothers of missing children, denying guilt and expressing shared pain. In 1997, he successfully sued the city for defamation and invasion of privacy, receiving a financial settlement. Yet despite legal outcomes, the shadow of suspicion never fully lifted. For investigators, each suspect who failed to lead to Amanda represented not progress, but another dead end. Another reminder that the truth remained hidden, as names surfaced and then faded. The case grew heavier rather than clearer. Every suspect eliminated meant fewer explanations remained. Families wondered how many times the truth had come close only to slip away. Investigators questioned whether early focus on certain individuals had distracted from other possibilities. And the public, watching from a distance, began to sense something unsettling. What if the person responsible had never been questioned at all? What if the real mistake was not accusing the wrong person, but missing the right one as the years passed and Amanda's face grew older only in digitally altered images? The investigation faced a haunting realization. Time does not erase guilt, but it does erase evidence. And with each year that passed, the window for certainty narrowed. The next chapter would force authorities to confront an even more disturbing possibility. What if the person who took Amanda had lived an ordinary life afterward, untouched by suspicion, waiting quietly as the world slowly moved on? As the investigation moved into its second decade, the disappearance of Amanda Nicole Eileen Campbell entered a phase that is often more painful than the beginning. The phase where silence replaces urgency. The flashing lights were gone, the volunteers had returned to their lives, and the streets where Amanda once rode her bicycle looked ordinary again. But for her family and for the investigators who could not let go, the case never truly rested. Every year that passed without answers added weight rather than closure. Hope did not disappear, it hardened into something quieter and more fragile. This was the period when a single phone call could still change everything, yet most calls only reopened old wounds. For those still searching, the question was no longer just what happened, but why the truth continued to hide. Throughout the late 1990s and early 2000s, Fairfield police continued to receive tips related to Amanda's disappearance. Many came from well-meaning members of the public who believed they had seen her, while others were vague claims that could not be verified. One of the most serious leads emerged in 2001, when authorities received information suggesting that Amanda had been murdered and that her body was hidden in the crawlspace of a home on Salisbury Drive, just 1 block from where she disappeared. The implication was terrifying. If true, it meant that Amanda had never left the neighborhood, and that the person responsible had remained close all along. Investigators conducted a thorough search of the property, carefully examining the crawlspace and surrounding areas. No evidence was found. The lead collapsed, leaving behind another unanswered question and reinforcing a troubling pattern. Each promising lead seemed to end the same way, with nothing solid to hold on to. During these years, Amanda's case was logged in national missing person databases, ensuring that her information remained accessible to law enforcement agencies across the country. Her disappearance was officially classified as endangered missing, acknowledging the likelihood of foul play based on the circumstances. Periodically, her image appeared on billboards, in news features, and in cold case documentaries, each time sparking renewed interest followed by disappointment. Advances in forensic technology raised hopes that old evidence might yield new answers, but Amanda's case suffered from a painful limitation. There was very little physical evidence to re-examine. No confirmed crime scene, no recovered clothing, no biological material that could benefit from modern testing. For investigators, this meant relying heavily on witness memories that faded with time and on suspects whose lives had moved on. Families of other missing children saw cases solved decades later, sometimes through confessions or genetic evidence, and wondered when it would be Amanda's turn. Yet with each passing year, the emotional toll deepened. For Amanda's parents, birthdays and anniversaries became reminders of both who she was and who she never had the chance to become. They continued to speak publicly, to cooperate with investigators, and to keep her name alive, even as hope and grief existed side by side. The case became a symbol of unresolved loss, not just for one family, but for a community that had learned how quickly safety could vanish. As time stretched on, a new fear began to surface quietly. What if the case was no longer unsolved because of complexity, but because of absence? What if the person responsible had died, moved away, or buried the truth so deeply that it could never be reached? Investigators wrestled with the possibility that answers might never come through traditional means. Each year reduced the number of witnesses who could remember details clearly. Each year increased the distance between Amanda's disappearance and the present day. And yet, the case refused to disappear completely. Somewhere someone still knew what happened. Somewhere a memory still existed that had never been shared. The question was whether that silence would ever break, and if it did, whether it would come in time to finally bring peace to a family that had waited far too long. The next chapter would test that hope one more time, as new attention and a new name briefly reopened the case and forced everyone to ask whether the past was truly finished or merely waiting. Decades after a 4-year-old girl rode her bicycle down a quiet street and never came back, the case of Amanda Nicole Eileen Campbell refused to disappear completely. Time had taken memories, witnesses, and certainty, but it had not erased curiosity. In recent years, renewed attention briefly returned to the case when authorities examined whether a former pastor who once lived near Amanda could be connected. The possibility alone was enough to reopen old wounds and reignite public interest. For families who have waited decades, even the smallest movement feels like a chance for truth. This chapter represents the final known reopening of the investigation, a moment that forced everyone to confront how much time had passed and how fragile hope had become. It was a reminder that some cases never truly close, they only sleep, waiting for the right name, the right memory, or the right confession to wake them again. In 2023, authorities identified David Zandstra, an 83-year-old former pastor, as a person of interest in the disappearance of Amanda Nicole Eileen Campbell. Zandstra had been charged in the same year with the murder of 8-year-old Gretchen Harrington in 1975, a case that occurred in Pennsylvania. The relevance to Amanda's case came from timing and location. From 1990 to 2005, Zandstra worked as a pastor at the Fairfield Christian Reformed Church, placing him in the same community during the period of Amanda's disappearance. Records indicated that an address associated with him was located a short distance from where Amanda lived in 1991. For investigators, this proximity warranted examination, especially given the seriousness of the charges he faced in another state. The announcement drew immediate attention from media outlets and the public, many of whom hoped that a long-missing answer might finally surface. Fairfield police reviewed available information, revisited timelines, and evaluated whether any overlooked connections existed. However, by December 2023, authorities publicly cleared Zandstra of any involvement in Amanda's case. The following year, in January 2025, he was acquitted of the Harrington murder as well. These outcomes did not resolve Amanda's disappearance, but they did underscore a painful truth. Even when new names emerge, proof remains essential, and suspicion alone cannot replace evidence. As of September 2025, Amanda Nicole Eileen Campbell remains missing. Her case is listed in the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System and in the DOE network, where her disappearance is classified as endangered missing due to the circumstances involved. No arrests have been made, no remains have been found. What remains is a timeline frozen at a bicycle, a gate, and a quiet street in Fairfield, California. For investigators, the case stands as a reminder of how quickly opportunity can vanish and how difficult it is to recover it once time has passed. For the public, it is a story that challenges assumptions about safety and familiarity. And for Amanda's family, it is a life lived in waiting, with questions that still demand answers. Even now, the case carries a quiet weight. Someone knows what happened to Amanda Nicole Eileen Campbell. Somewhere, there is a memory that has not been spoken, a detail that has not been shared, a truth that has not been faced. The passage of time does not erase responsibility, it only changes the way justice must be pursued. As long as Amanda's name remains known, the possibility of answers remains alive. The question is not whether the truth exists, but whether it will ever come forward. And if it does, whether the world will be listening closely enough to finally hear it. References and documented sources for this story include archived reports from the Charley Project, the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Jose Mercury News, the Sacramento Bee, the Oakland Tribune, the San Francisco Examiner, the Napa Valley Register, the Associated Press, Investigation Discovery, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, and the DOE Network, along with publicly released statements from Fairfield Police Department and related court records that confirm the events, dates, and investigative actions described in this documentary. If you believe stories like this matter, now is the moment to act. Subscribe to Hidden Truth, share this video with others who care about real cases and real people, comment with your thoughts or any information that could help, and press the bell icon so you never miss a story that deserves to be remembered. Every subscription strengthens this channel, every share keeps Amanda's name alive, and every comment brings us one step closer to truth.